Joining us now live, former Lieutenant Governor, 2 terms, Bill Bolling. Bill, good to see you.
Good morning, John. Good to see you. You said there was beer at the party. If you'd have had some here this morning, I would have gotten here earlier.
That's right. We have free beer at the party, and don't drink and drive. Virginia Zoo. You can call Uber or the taxi, whatever, but we're going to have a lot of fun. But you got to go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. And even Bill Bolling says, hey, buy some tickets to this fundraising event.
Well,
now,
it sounds like a great cause.
I'm fired up to have you on, Bill, because you are the last Republican to win a statewide race. We lost 7 in a row, and it's getting worse. So I look at the state. Look, I ran the Trump campaign at Virginia, and, we got enough money to be competitive. We had a lot of volunteers. I got the 2 big guys in at the final weekend in Northern Virginia. We lost Alexandria, Fairfax, and Arlington, Bill, by a combined 312,000 votes. You talk about getting your head chopped off, right? Where was I going to make that up? Radford? You just can't make it up. How does Virginia elect a Republican?
Well, I think the answer to that is to look at the campaign that, frankly, Bob McDonnell and I ran in 2009.
Bob for Jobs and
9.
A bill for business.
It was a conservative campaign. We talked about conservative principles and values, but we presented them in a mainstream way. The focus of the campaign was really on what I call kitchen table issues. When a family sits down around the table at night, what is it that they talk about? They talk about whether they've got a job or not, whether they've got a good job or not, whether their kids can go to a good school or not, whether they can afford to send their kids to a college or university of their choice, how long it took them to get to work that morning in traffic. Do they have health insurance and health care? These are the issues that families care about. And I believe conservative Republicans can win in Virginia if they talk about these issues and present them in a more mainstream way. And that's what we did in 2009. One of the realizations that I think we as Republicans, though, have to make, we used to have this debate, is Virginia a red state or a blue state? And people would say, well, it's a purple state. It's kind of a little bit of both. But the truth is, in these top-of-the-ticket statewide political campaigns, Virginia is a blue state. And that's a painful thing for Republicans to acknowledge, but it's true. In fact, it's an interesting statistic. More Republicans have won statewide campaigns in Massachusetts in the last 10 years than have won statewide campaigns in Virginia. So we need to understand, in these top-of-the-ticket statewide campaigns, president, governor,
senator,
U.S. senator, Virginia is a blue state, and we need to recognize that. We need to be nominating candidates who can not necessarily carry Northern Virginia, although we did that, but at least be competitive in Northern Virginia. Because
you can't get beat by 312,000.
Well, no, and you can get 65% of the vote downstate and still lose because of the tremendous amount of population.
Too many people, right.
Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, Prince William, Loudoun, that's the area that Republicans have to do better in. And the kind of candidate you nominate, the kind of message they have, the kind of issues they focus on determines your ability to win those top-of-the-ticket statewide campaigns.
Well, and Bill, what I always find interesting, and that's a great nugget you gave us, that Massachusetts has elected more statewide Republicans in the past decade than Virginia has. But if you go back in time a little bit, just so our audience knows, Bill Bolling, when he ran for lieutenant governor, when did you beat Sean in the primary, 2005?
Yeah, I try not to remind him of that.
2005.
2005.
Right? So, Bill, and you were a supervisor in where?
I was a state senator at the time of that campaign.
That's right. So you were a state senator. So you ran, and then Sean Connaughton, who's became transportation secretary, and is now the head of here at the VHHA. He was a chairman of supervisors in Prince William, right?
That's right.
Anyway, so everybody walk back in time. Bill Bolling ran as the far right-wing conservative in the race, right? You were like the real. There was even an article by the Washington Post or something saying, Republican Party in the Virginia moving made to the right, this like crazy conservative Bill Bolling running for lieutenant governor, and you won, and then somehow, and you did everything you said you were going to do, and then somehow you became the moderate when you were running for governor. I mean, like, how did that happen?
Well, it's a bizarre political world,
Isn't it?
That we live in.
I mean, is that? Am I giving an accurate
No, it's
description?
fair. I mean, there was a day when it was folks like Bill Bolling and Bob McDonnell that, frankly, Eric Cantor, were the conservative face of the Republican Party in Virginia. Truthfully, we haven't changed. I haven't changed a bit over the years philosophically. I may be a little more pragmatic today than I was back then, but the definition of what it takes to be viewed as a conservative has so changed that today those of us who were the conservative face of the party are now squishy moderate rhino wimps. I mean, that's the way the process has kind of changed. And sometimes you shake your head and it's like Dorothy and wondering am I in Kansas or am I in Oz, or it's about that scene from the Looking Glass where you don't recognize anything around you. I will say this, since you brought up that campaign, the toughest political campaign I ever had in my life was that primary campaign against now my good friend Sean Connaughton. He ran
05.
In 05. He ran a great campaign and frankly would have been a great statewide leader for Virginia. I've tried to get him to run again, but I think he's really happy doing what he's doing right now.
Well, so, after you beat him so handily, I think that was about it. You took the air out of his sails for that. But, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, let's get to Virginia politics, if we may, right? A couple of interesting things happening. Number one, we can't find another election year in Virginia history where both the Republicans and the Democrats are having a statewide office primary on the same day at the same time. Never happened, right? So that's a first. Let's get to the Republican side. Let's start with the governor. 4 candidates: Ed Gillespie, Denver Riggleman, State Senator Frank Wagner, chairman of Prince William. Corey Stewart was the chairman of the Trump campaign, got fired. What do you think?
Well, I think Ed Gillespie will win the nomination, and I hope he does. I think I'm supporting Ed Gillespie. I think he's a good, solid guy. I think he ran an outstanding campaign against Mark Warner in 2014, a race nobody thought he could even be competitive in, and he almost won that race. So I think Ed is a good, strong statewide candidate. I think he can do well in places like Northern Virginia that we talked about earlier, but also do well downstate. Ed has managed to navigate the kind of the maze that is the Republican Party these days, in that he has strong support by traditional Republicans like me. He also has strong support among Tea Party groups across the state. He stayed in good relations, I think, with folks who came into the process last year to support President Trump. So I think he's got a pretty broad base. I think he can win and will win the Republican nomination. And I think he's got a darn good chance. Can't take it for granted, but I think he's got a darn good chance of being the next governor of Virginia.
Okay, so I think it is going to be close because the Democrats are certainly not going to get the turnout in an off-year election like they had for Hillary. So let's get a little down ticket. Lieutenant Governor, 3 people now, 2 of them in an email battle, scandals going on. That's Jill Vogel, Bryce Reeves, both state senators. Reeves accusing the Vogels or the Vogel team of sending out a scurrilous blind email. The Vogels denying that. It's kind of ugly. And then Glenn Davis, second-term state senator, Virginia Beach, worked hard to get in the race. I mean, I think it's pretty much now a 3-way dead heat. I don't know who's going to win that. I think another candidate's getting in. You ran for lieutenant governor successfully twice. What do you think?
Well, let me say, first of all, I'm not the other candidate that's getting in. Let's get that on the record. Look, I know Jill.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. It's not me. Another candidate out there. It's not me. Look, I know Jill Vogel. I know Bryce Reeves. I have great respect.
They're good people
for both of them. They were in the state senate when I was lieutenant governor. I worked closely with both of them. I hate to see them in this kind of back and forth that they're in right now, and I hope that both of them can maybe find a way to rise above that. Glenn Davis is an interesting candidate. I really didn't think he had a lot of opportunity in this race. But I think that Vogel and Reeves have given him some opportunity, and people are now starting to take a second look at him, and he's an interesting candidate. So these are 3 good candidates. I think right now a very competitive race. I think Reeves and Vogel have really got to find a way to bury the hatchet, put this controversy they're in right now behind them, and get back to really talking about things that people care about, because it's not making either one of them look very good.
It's not helpful. So current chairman of the Ed Gillespie campaign, Pete Snyder, ran for lieutenant governor in 2013, got beat at the convention by E.W. Jackson, came in second. Some people thinking that Pete Snyder might get in the race on Monday or Tuesday, saying, look, I got to help Ed win. This thing is kind of messy. Certainly he can self-fund his campaign. He ran a pretty solid race, I thought, in 2013. He was kind of a fun candidate that we covered. Pete Snyder gets in at this late date. Can he win?
Yeah, I mean, Pete's a good guy. He's got a great reputation, a successful business guy from Northern Virginia, which is a plus. I think he's worked in the trenches, even though he didn't win the nomination in 2013. He went out and worked hard for the ticket, and as you've mentioned, he's been working hard for Ed Gillespie. He certainly would be a good teammate for Ed Gillespie because they have a strong personal relationship. A lot like, frankly, the relationship that Bob McDonnell and I had in 2009. So, Ed has the ability to raise money. So even though it's kind of quote late by traditional standards to be getting into a race that has a primary coming up in the summer, if anybody can do that, I think a guy like Pete Snyder could. And if he chooses to get in the race, I think it could change the dynamics there pretty dramatically and pretty quickly.
So you think if he gets in, you think he could win?
I do, absolutely.
I do also. Last time I talked to him, he said, look, I'm Ed Gillespie, state chairman. I'm focused on that. But I think somebody's going to get in this race, and Pete's got the ability to raise money, self-fund. Plus, he's got a following, and I think he would shake up that race. And I think if he gets in, he would be the front runner almost immediately, only because of some of the things that have gone on there. And then you look at Glenn Davis, who I think is a very fine candidate, and he's battled his way into this thing. I mean, he just came from nowhere. But then you look at his financials, he's got $80,000 cash on hand. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, I love Glenn to death, but he's got $80,000.
Yeah, and sometimes, you get into a race like this, maybe you don't do as good as you wanted to do, but you lay a platform. He's a young guy, and there's certainly a future in the party for young guys like that.
We're with former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling of Virginia, 2 terms Lieutenant Governor, 05-09. And was the one of 3 of the last statewide candidates to win. And remember, they ran on that great mantra platform in 09. As before, I was in Virginia, so I was covering it from, just interested in from Georgia because it was the first election after Obama. And it was Bob for jobs and a bill for business, right? Bob for jobs and bill for business. I remember following that in Georgia. The media down there, we were saying, this is going to be really the first test of Obama. And you guys won in a landslide. Terry McAuliffe ran that year and got beat in the primary by Cray Deeds, right? So that was a lot of fun. Democratic race for governor, Ralph Northam, everything's going fine, raising money, doing the Ralph Northam thing. All of a sudden, Tom Perriello jumps in the race. Now we got a dogfight. What do you think?
Well, I think it is going to be a dogfight. I like Ralph Northam. Ralph is a friend of mine. I've known him for a number of years. I've always found him to be a very responsible guy. Now, let me be clear. I'm supporting Ed Gillespie in the campaign for governor, but Northam is he's a good guy, and I think he thought, well, I'm going to be the Democratic nominee, especially when Attorney General Mark Herring said I'm going to run for re-election to the office of Attorney General. I don't think anybody expected Tom Perriello to get into the race. Ralph Northam is kind of a moderate Democrat. He goes off on the left wing every now and then, but he's kind of a moderate Democrat. Tom Perriello is the Bernie Sanders of Virginia. I mean, he's way out there, and I think we all know that there is a way out there part of the Democratic Party in Virginia. I think they're going to be attracted to Tom Perriello. So I think that could be a very interesting race to watch. I think Ralph Northam has to take Tom Perriello very seriously. And what I suspect Tom Perriello will do is pull Ralph Northam farther to the left, which may make it a little more difficult for him to get back to the center, which is really where he wants to be running a gubernatorial campaign in the fall. So of the two gubernatorial primaries, I actually think the Republican one could be Ed Gillespie by a wide margin. I think the Democratic one could be a lot more fun to watch.
I think it is going to be fun. And Tom Perriello, Ralph Northam, everybody thought that was going to be a snooze fest. Now it's competitive. Lieutenant Governor's side, 2 candidates, actually 3. Gene Rossi, U.S. Attorney, he's running, but I got him at 75-1. He isn't going to win. Then you got Justin Fairfax, ran against Mark Herring last time. I've got him as the favorite. Now all of a sudden Susan Platt gets in, longtime Democratic operative, chief of staff for Joe Biden back in the day. Now that's a competitive race.
Yeah, to be honest, I have not. I followed what's going on at the top of the Democratic ticket. I really have not followed at all what's going on in their down ticket races for lieutenant governor and attorney general. So I'm not sure I'm really good at handicapping kind of those races. I do think just superficially that Justin Fairfax probably is the guy you would think has the best chance of winning that nomination, simply because he's a little more of a known commodity, having run before. But these down ticket races are tough because they really turn out to be more personality races than anything else, and it's hard to tell how they evolve. But I would tend to agree with you just on the basis that he's run before, people know him, a little higher name ID, that helps in a primary. I think you're probably right now to handicap him as maybe the favorite in that race.
Look, he's never stopped running since he almost upset Herring. Mark Herring in 2013, and he's never stopped running. He's got a beautiful family, and he's very energetic, and I think he's the favorite to win. But Susan Platt, she's got the establishment ties and Democrat establishment of former chief of staff to Joe Biden. Maybe Joe Biden comes in May and does a statewide tour for us. That happens, game changer. We don't know.
The one thing the Democratic Party is very good at doing is trying to promote diversity on their statewide tickets. And when you've got Ralph Northam potentially at the top of the ticket, or even Tom Perriello, and then you got Mark Herring running for Attorney General, looking for ways to have some diversity in that ticket is something that I think Democratic voters would probably look at. So a little unpredictable, but I do think that your analysis of Fairfax as probably being the front runner in that race is fair. The thing that's been most interesting to me, though, John, about that whole campaign is I really thought Mark Herring was going to run for governor. I was really surprised when he made the decision to not run for a governor and to run again for attorney general. If anyone was going to make that decision, I thought it would be the other way around, that Herring would be the candidate for governor and Northam would run for re-election. So I was surprised when that happened. I think that changed the dynamic of the 2017 campaign for Democrats dramatically. And, Ralph Northam, as we talked a little bit in the last segment, is a good guy. He's someone I've always liked and had a very good relationship with and a lot of respect for. Whether or not he has the passion, the energy level to run an aggressive and effective statewide campaign, I think is the question. I always thought Mark Herring had that. I wasn't sure Ralph Northam did. So I was surprised when Herring said, I'm going to run for re-election and let Ralph Northam run for governor. I think a lot of Democrats were probably surprised as well.
Why do you think Herring did that?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not talked to Mark Herring about that. I really have no inside information on why he did that. He may have just enjoy being Attorney General. He may have lost some of his passion along the way for wanting to take on a statewide gubernatorial campaign. Timing in these things is everything. Maybe it just wasn't the right time for him to do that personally or professionally. But it was a surprising decision. If you looked at the two, Mark Herring and Ralph Northam, and said, who's the most likely statewide candidate for governor, I think 9 out of 10 people would have said Mark Herring, not Ralph Northam. So that was an unexpected development for me in the Democratic Party. And I think one of the big questions with Ralph Northam is, does he have that energy? Does he have that passion to run an aggressive and effective statewide campaign? We're going to find that out sooner than later, because now he's got to fend off this challenge from the far left wing of the Democratic Party in Tom Perriello.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Many of us, I certainly thought Herring was going to run, and I thought a lot of what he did as Attorney General that came under question by a lot of people was done in order to cement his credentials, his cred with the progressive wing of the party that was ultimately going to choose a nominee. But that didn't happen, and now Perriello has stepped in that. But I'm with you, Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling. I think that the race for governor on the Democratic side is going to be much closer than people think. I had Chris Saxman on my show yesterday, who you knew you served with in the General Assembly, who thought, Northam 65-35, no way. I think it's 52-48, 57-43, but it's not going to be a blowout.
Yeah, it could be. I think it'll be a lot closer than a lot of people think. And I also think the other thing to watch, again, even if Northam wins the nomination, does he have to move so far to the left in winning the nomination that it makes it more difficult for him to win in November? There are going to be a lot of interesting dynamics to watch in that contest.
Let's get to Trump. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, full disclosure, I was not a Trump fan. He was not my first choice or second choice or third choice or fourth choice or fifth choice. But, I have a lot of respect for the campaign that he ran. He ran a very effective campaign. I think he put his finger on a lot of the way that the American people were thinking and the frustrations that they had about government. I think he put his finger on that a long time before anybody else noticed it. And I think that's why he went from a candidate that no one gave any chance when he first rode down that escalator at Trump Tower to announce his candidacy to someone who really, you have to say, blew his competition away. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And, whether you supported him or not, he won the election. He won it fair and square. He's our president. I want him to do a good job, for the country. And I think, it's early. This is, it's a week, tomorrow, from his inauguration.
Is that hard to believe? He's done all this stuff. It's been 5 days.
In 5 days.
Right?
And,
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So he's stirring the pot. And that's what he said he wanted to do. I think that's what the people that voted for him wanted him to do. And, I think he's got some real opportunity. And when he talks about creating jobs and getting the economy moving again, reducing taxes and regulations and doing things like freeing up some of these pipeline projects to move forward. I think the business community has responded to that. He's got a great opportunity to get the budget balanced and start bringing down the debt, which I think people would really like. And, is clearly going to have some opportunities to change the structure of the Supreme Court over the next 4 years. So, from a policy standpoint, I think he's got a lot of opportunities to succeed, and I certainly want him to succeed. And, 4 years from now, if he runs for president, I hope we're in a position where I can go out there and say, hey, man, I was totally wrong about Donald Trump. He's been a great president, and if he is, I'll be leading the bandwagon, to get him reelected 4 years from now. So you got to respect what the guy's done, and everybody, regardless of how you felt about Trump or who you supported in the primaries, or for that matter in the general election, I think the attitude of everybody right now ought to be, this guy's our president. The direction and fate of our country in the next 4 years is going to depend upon his ability to succeed. So let's get behind him and let's try to help him succeed.
Well, look, and, Lieutenant Governor, one of the best things about you and why we get along so good is you were not a Trump fan, okay, at the beginning. But you were never toxic, right? You simply said, I prefer other candidates. I don't like his policies. I don't like this or that. But you were never toxic. And that's why I've been friends with you for so long, because there's things we can agree and disagree on, but you can do it in a way that's honest and upfront, and you stay on good terms with each other. And
you focus on, I think, the things that matter most. And, with Trump, it was never so much concerns on my part about his policies. There were policies that I would agree with or disagree with, but by and large, I think the vision that he articulated on key policies facing the country were things I was comfortable with. I was a little concerned about his demeanor, actually, more than his policies. But, I also acknowledge that the things about Trump that maybe concerned me were the things that really drew hundreds of thousands of Americans to him.
Right.
Because I think they wanted someone who was going to go to Washington and, to use the phrase of the day, drain the swamp and shake the place up.
And fight.
And fight. And I give him credit for that. I mean, I think he, even though he was probably originally the only non-politician in the race, he turned out to be a better politician than any of the politicians in the race, because he put his finger on these attitudes and frustrations that the American people were feeling. But look, he won the nomination fair and square. He won the election fair and square. And it's just really frustrating to me as Americans. This is a time where we need to rally behind our president, agree or disagree, but let's try to do it in a professional, responsible, diplomatic way. And I think some of these protests and things we've seen going on across the country, we're about freedom of speech, but that's really not what we're about. And so my attitude with Trump is he's our president. I want him to succeed. Whether we agree or disagree on things, I'm going to do everything I can to help make him a good president, because I think that's best for our country.
Okay, Bill Bolling, let's make predictions. Republican side primary nominee?
In which
Governor.
race? In governor, Ed Gillespie.
Lieutenant governor?
Well, if Pete Snyder gets in the race, I'd say Pete Snyder. If Pete Snyder does not get in the race, that one I think is hard to call right now.
Okay, Attorney General, John Adams, Chuck Smith.
Yeah, John Adams. I think he's done a good job there, and I think he'll win that nomination.
All right, Democratic side, Northam, Perriello.
I think Northam can win it, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor, Fairfax, Rossi, or Platt?
At this point, I agree with you. I think probably Justin Fairfax.
Okay, so then let's go just top of the ticket. Who wins? If it's Gillespie, Northam, who wins?
I think Gillespie wins. I think it'll be a competitive race just because of the dynamics that exist in Virginia today. But I think Ed Gillespie, I think he simply can out-hustle Ralph Northam. I think Ed's a very smart guy who will offer a positive vision for the future of the state that focuses on the big issues people care about. I think he'll do much better in Northern Virginia than, say, we did in 2013. So Ed Gillespie, Ralph Northam, I think it's a race Ed Gillespie can win.
All right, you heard it here first from the last statewide candidate, conservative, to carry Virginia, and that is Bill Bolling. He did it 2 times. Remember, he won 2 times. Statewide ticket. I think he might be the only person to have done that in a very long time. You have to probably go way back. But he won it 2 times, 05 and 09 as lieutenant governor. We're out of time. I want to thank Bill Bolling for being with us. Bill, it's good to see you. I'm so glad you came in today. It's been way too long.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
All right. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network, and Bill Bolling, one of my favorite people in the world, and graced us with his presence for an hour, plus made predictions, which I'm going to, of course, put up on Twitter, and then he's going to get all kinds of phone calls, and he'll say, why do you even go over there? But that's part of the game. You can only get this stuff on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I'll be right back.